What's so interesting about this watch? Yeah! It's a countdown. For what?
It's a countdown for Zartan. We are through the miniseries and into the one-off episodic formula of Season 1. And what a way to start. An all-time great episode, and maybe the most single badass moment from the entire run of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. Plus, if Zartan's involved, you just know we're going to be talking about his hair. This is G.I. Retro.
Now, back to G.I. Joe.
Yo, Joe, and welcome, everyone, back to G.I. Retro, where we are revisiting and celebrating each and every episode of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, the Sunbow run, and we're finally here, through the first three miniseries and into the standalone episodes. Our very first one, Countdown for Zartan. It's a personal favorite of mine. I think it is one of the absolute best and a great way for G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, to start the sort of episodic formula that they would have in Season 1. Originally aired September 23rd, 1985, written by Christy Marks, directed by John Gibbs and Terry Lennon, and really coming out guns blazing, a great cast of characters in this episode, although some notable absences, which I'll also mention here. But for the Cobra side, of course, we have Cobra Commander Destro, as you might imagine, in an episode titled Countdown for Zartan. Zartan heavily featured along with the Dreadnoks and Storm Shadow, and we'll be talking a lot about him. For the Joes, it is Spirit and Freedom, Gung Ho, Lady J, Stalker, and Doc rounding out the Joe team that are highlighted in this episode. Interesting that neither Duke or Flint are involved in this first standalone. That's something that caught my attention as I went back to rewatch this. Thought that was interesting. Also, no Scarlet. Lady J, though, sort of assuming, I would say, the command position in this episode for sure, along with Gung Ho, who is doing a lot in this episode. But a great cast to start things out and a lot of great moments. I mentioned at the top, has maybe the most single badass moment in the entire run of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, and we will be getting to that very shortly. But we pick up at Cobra's latest hideout out in the jungle, some sort of Mayan-looking pyramid here, and we have the Dreadnoks looking to help train the latest Cobra recruits.
All right, trainees, you've got work to do if you expect to join Cobra's army.
No, me boy. That will never do. It what? Destroy the foundation, and the rest comes tumbling down. All right, hold it. Stop. You want results? Use tracer ammo like this.
This is plastic explosive. Catch! By itself, nothing happens. But if you add a detonating device and set the timer, watch out!
So the Dreadnoks imparting what I guess counts from them as words of wisdom to the Cobra trainees. And by the way, the Cobra trainees, I'm going to go ahead and make them our MIA, the missing in action figure from this episode, because I really like the look of them, not fully in Cobra yet, so they don't have the helmet or their usual garb, but instead in that balaclava. It's a really cool look, and certainly something that I wouldn't have said no to in an action figure for sure. So maybe a little minor point, but would have been an interesting troop builder to have those Cobra trainees. But also training with Storm Shadow, he's trying to show them another way of becoming proficient in combat, a more sort of zen, balanced, less chaotic way than what the Dreadnoks are offering. They're sort of making fun of Storm Shadow and, talking all this trash about how their way's better, use these tracer rounds, use the blowtorch, the chainsaw, all this stuff. They destroy this tank, and the trainees seem pretty with that. And then Storm Shadow, and this is it. This is a scene among scenes when it comes to G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. It's one that has been forever burned in my memory, one that when I reminisce about this show, it comes up right near the top for me. It's one of those playground argument winning type scenes. I talked about this when with my brother when we were out there at Joe Fest, so I've alluded to it. Here it is. I'm just going to go ahead and show it. Is this the most badass scene in the history of G.I. Joe?
With our weapons, we dreadnoughts are unbeatable.
Anyone can use a weapon, but the ninja is a weapon. Behold!
He's not so tough. Blimey.
There it is. Storm Shadow destroying a tank with his bare hands. One of the most badass things that you could ever conceive of, and we get to see it here in the first standalone episode of G.I. Joe. Like I said, etched into my memory forever, something my brother and I would talk about a lot, growing up together. And, I mentioned like playground arguments, who would beat who in a fight, all those great, discussions that we get to, when we were growing up and now, online as well. The ultimate trump card is, oh yeah, well, did your favorite character destroy a tank with his bare hands like Storm Shadow did? No. So very much so the who would beat who in a fight. Storm Shadow has kind of the ultimate edge, in my opinion, with this scene. Incredible. It's always awesome to go back and rewatch it. And shout out to Keon Young, too, the voice actor who just absolutely crushes it as Storm Shadow and really enhances everything that he does that we get to see visually with his great voice performance. Going along with it here, too, dropping such a cold line, perfectly delivered, talking about, anyone can use a weapon, but the ninja is a weapon, and then goes on to prove it in the most spectacular of ways. So Storm Shadow, really showcasing what the 80s United States ninja craze was all about, that ninja mania that took us by storm. I really think Storm Shadow is at the forefront and the face of that. I think he is sort of, pop culture wise, to me, the face of ninja mania in the United States. And that's something that we'll probably talk about, a little bit more as we go along, because there's some great Storm Shadow episodes where we can revisit that. But, he preceded, I believe preceded Ninja Gaiden and Shinobi. They went ninja crazy eventually in G.I. Joe and all throughout pop culture. But when Storm Shadow was doing it, it still felt very new, very mysterious and awesome and cool. And so, yeah, I really give a lot of credit to Storm Shadow for that. Let's continue on, though. We've got Storm Shadow destroying that tank as Destro and Cobra Commander are looking on. And this episode, we're going to revisit some questions and some things we've touched on already here at GI Retro, and look no further than some rivalries being renewed, like that of Destro and Zartan.
Zartan and the Dreadnoks are far more loyal and valuable to me than you are, Destro.
How can you say that, Commander? They are fools.
Greetings, Destro.
What? But if you're in here, Commander, then who?
Very convincing, Zartan.
Who plays the fool now, Destro?
One day, Zartan, you will push me too far.
Zartan and Destro renewing hostilities in a major way here, that rivalry continuing on, Destro being Zartan's greatest hater, and vice versa. Also getting to see Zartan's propensity to be a master of disguise throughout this episode. Really, the whole episode hinges on that, for better or worse for Zartan. But so we see him pretending to be Cobra Commander, and that leads us to sort of our plot for this episode, as the real Cobra Commander is going to point out what exactly is the scheme for this episode.
Enough of this bickering. There are more important things. This is the Worldwide Defense Center. Their goal is to end terrorism.
I am already well aware of it.
Scientists from around the world have gathered to feed all their information about terrorism into the Defense Center's computers.
That could threaten Cobra's very existence. Have they finished programming yet?
No. They still await the arrival of Dr. Metier of France. We must act now.
So there you have it, a summit at the Worldwide Defense Center discussing and sharing intel about terrorism. All these world leaders meeting to give intel on various terrorist organizations and determining how to stop it in its tracks. So, of course, Cobra very interested in disrupting this summit because they are the preeminent terrorist organization determined to rule the world. So they can't have this summit going off without a hitch. Cobra Commander entrusting Zartan to infiltrate as Dr. Metier, showing a lot of faith in Zartan here, and Destro is sure to flag that and none too pleased. But Zartan and his dreadnoughts are able to capture, neutralize Dr. Metier, and he assumes his identity. But how well does Zartan assume his identity? We saw him do Cobra Commander expertly. Dr. Metier, a little bit of a different story, almost from the jump. Yes, he looks the part. Yes, he can sound the part. But could Zartan act the part? And the answer to that is a resounding no. He sort of flops spectacularly. And as we're discussing the circumstances of why this disguise failed for Zartan, I want to point out that this episode does a good job of sort of having some callbacks or foreshadowing to consequences in the plot line. And in this instance, I'm talking about before Dr. Metier got captured, he was running late. And so, in the animation, they very deliberately show him checking his watch, his very much so not digital watch. And so just a few scenes later, they pay that off with Dr. Metier's friend and colleague saying, hey, you said you'd never wear a digital watch. Kind of a weird bet to make, but I kind of like it. And I'm on Dr. Metier's side because it feels like to me if he were around today, he'd be very much so a buy physical media guy, and that's a man after my own heart. And of course, no way for Zartan to know that they would have had that bet, but still, got to dot those I's and cross those T's. The devil and the success is in the detail, and not really any success to be had with this disguise because Spirit and Freedom, they are wise to his act and they discover him with Storm Shadow and that bomb. And that leads to another rivalry being renewed, that of Spirit and Storm Shadow. And we get another great epic duel between these two rivals.
No, Freedom, get help! Ha!
This episode is a great reprise of Spirit and Storm Shadow's rivalry. Maybe the best that we get from their rivalry in the animated series. And we get this duel starting out here in the Defense Center, and Zartan coming in from behind, cutting it short. We get to see, again, another look into Storm Shadow's warrior code. He is absolutely not pleased with Zartan interfering.
I must put an end to this fighting or we will both be destroyed.
Destroyed? How?
You had no right to interfere, Zartan.
Don't be a fool, Storm Shadow. The bomb is set to go off. Get rid of him.
Storm Shadow didn't want to win it that way. And even though he serves Cobra, he has this higher standard and this code of honor and conduct that he holds himself to and everybody around him, including his combatants who he is facing. He has a certain degree of respect for, none higher than Spirit. And let's keep it with them because they continue interacting throughout this episode. We'll be jumping around a little bit in the timeline of the episode, but while we're on the subject of Spirit and Storm Shadow, so after Zartan interferes, Storm Shadow takes him to Cobra's hideout, again in that jungle pyramid, puts him in a cell with Dr. Metier, and it's later on that we see the Dreadnought sort of torturing and tormenting Spirit and Dr. Metier, and Storm Shadow is having none of it.
Get out. If I find you here again, you shall pay dearly. Noble enemies should not be treated in this fashion.
This time, Storm Shadow making the save for Spirit, and again, getting into that, honorable enemies and prisoners should not be treated in this manner, sort of offering up an apology. Also, taking out the Dreadnoks in like one fell swoop, so showing off his ninja martial arts prowess yet again in this episode is Storm Shadow. Really good stuff, and surprisingly nuanced, I would say, for an 80s cartoon geared towards kids that gets maligned for just being a commercial for toys. It was never just that. And this stuff between Spirit and Storm Shadow really goes to prove that in a big way. And I'll say it again, their rivalry, it's one of the very best throughout the show. And Countdown for Zartan, we get some of the very best of it. And we do have one more really phenomenal interaction between Spirit and Storm Shadow, jumping further ahead in this episode. Gonna be bouncing around a little bit, but one more big interaction, and it also happens to be the "But did you die" moment of the week.
Did you die?
I got shot.
But did you die?
So after Storm Shadow makes the save for Spirit in his cell, Spirit knows that he's got to escape. He's got to help Dr. Metier get out of there. He does exactly that. They are able to escape, and Spirit is going to try and commandeer this Rattler, but Storm Shadow, he might have helped prevent the torture and murder in his cell, but he's not going to let Spirit go that easily, and it leads to their final confrontation of the episode. It is spectacular, but it is also absolutely DYD worthy, and just like when they tied for MVP, I'm giving the DYD to both Spirit and Storm Shadow. Take a look.
All right, here we...
That was only a warning, Spirit. Turn back.
No. Freedom!
We shall meet again, Spirit. We shall meet again.
One final great spotlight on the Spirit and Storm Shadow dynamic in this episode, and it's a phenomenal scene. It's got enough explosions to make Michael Bay jealous, and that's why it's our DYD, because we see Spirit making his escape in that Rattler, just sort of crashing / blasting through whatever that net dome that Cobra had set up was. We saw it retract earlier in the episode when Cobra was leaving. And then with Storm Shadow left behind, the entire hideout is just going up, explosions everywhere. And yet both are unscathed. And that's why it's sort of a tie for the "But did you die" moment of the week. But, Storm Shadow especially, it's a really, really cool visual with the pyramid blowing up. It's in flames behind him. It's very much so that trope of like from superhero movies or action movies of like, men love posing in front of something they've destroyed and walking away. And we get that here. This is, 1985. We're getting that from Storm Shadow, just walking off like a total badass. But it is our "Did you die" moment of the week. But in this case, maybe the most complimentary DYD. And now we got to rewind a little bit. We got to go back to the Defense Center. We've got to go back to Zartan and the Joe team. So if we need to rewind, Quick Kick, can you help me out? Rewinding all the way back to the Worldwide Defense Center. Spirit still captured. Dr. Metier still captured. Zartan still in disguise. But Freedom able to escape and able to sort of like Lassie warn the G.I. Joe team that something is up. I mean, They see Freedom without Spirit, and it's like, what's that? He's trapped down a well. Well, they know he's at that terrorism summit, so they get there on the double. And again, not Zartan's best day at work in terms of being master of disguise, because Lady J and Gung Ho sort of see through his Dr. Metier disguise almost immediately too. I mean, and Freedom already knows, but Zartan, with not really sort of the best guys here, when G.I. Joe shows up and he starts hiding in the corner, acting shifty. Anyway, Freedom able to snatch the mask off, and it is revealed that, yes, that is not Dr. Metier, it is Zartan.
That man in the corner. Look.
It's Zartan. Now I know we've got trouble.
What have you done with Spirit?
I'm your prisoner. Take me away.
No problem. They got a cell here.
No! Take me to the G.I. Joe prison. I demand it.
You seem awfully eager to go to prison.
Yes, that's the strangest demand I've ever heard.
It's also in the reveal of Zartan's disguise that we are going to hit back on the hair versus hood debate. This episode really is in my G.I. Retro wheelhouse for things that I've tossed out to the G.I. Joe community already. None more notable than the hair versus hood debate. And this one has some great animation in favor of Team Hair. We see Freedom able to snatch the mask off. That's hair. When Lady J trips Zartan as he's running away with one of her javelin, look at that glorious, lustrous 80s rocker band hair that we have on Zartan. So the hair versus hood debate rages on, but Countdown for Zartan providing some very strong ammunition that it is in fact hair on Zartan in the animated series. Not anywhere else, but in the cartoon, it's hair. Certainly in this episode, no real denying that. But moving along, and feel free to weigh in, but moving along with the episode, Zartan is captured by G.I. Joe and immediately starts flipping out. You know, he demands to be, yes, take me prisoner, but no poker face, like take me prisoner anywhere but here. So G.I. Joe immediately knows, hey, something's up, probably a bomb or something like that. You know, that's when Gung Ho discovers the countdown on that digital watch that Zartan was wearing. And so they throw him in a cell, and Gung Ho really, you know, great mind games from Gung Ho here is that he sets that countdown right in front of Zartan. So he's going to try and make Zartan crack. That's exactly what happens. And Gung Ho having the foresight to have set the watch ahead. So Zartan cracks in time for them to find the bomb. Although Recondo almost sets the bomb off before he's able to disable it. And boy, that would have been an all-time foul-up of the week if there ever was one. And speaking of Recondo, I am remiss. I didn't mention him at the top of the episode in terms of the key players for G.I. Joe in this one. My bad, Recondo. You know I love you. But they are able to disarm that bomb, and you think that would be it. I mean, Zartan can't believe it. His bombs never fail. But watching on the monitor and realizing that Zartan's plan did fail is Cobra Commander and the rest of his team, and they've got to make a last-ditch effort to attack this defense center and hopefully destroy all that intel on the world's terrorist organizations, because again, you know, that would be a lot of damaging information for Cobra and their operations. So they're going all out with this assault, and Zartan is going to make his escape from his prison cell. So, you know, chalk one up for Zartan, showing off that camouflage ability at the expense of Doc. And then later, Lady J, when he takes a gun to the power center and it's lights out, which very much so favors Zartan. And Lady J just sort of rushing off into the darkness. That caught my eye for potential foul up. It's not going to Lady J, but it did catch my eye. But then back to this assault on the defense center. We get more callbacks from earlier in the episode. We hear, you know, verbatim some of the training, the wise words of the Dreadnoks during this battle. Almost none of it working. And I really liked seeing the callback here. In particular, you know, when we get Doc pulling out the detonator from that C4 and the trainee just fainting, that was really, really good. And ultimately, as we fast forward now that the stuff between Spirit and Storm Shadow has happened, Spirit shows up in that Rattler to turn the tide for G.I. Joe in the battle. Cobra is rebuffed. They retreat. They're able to make their escape, though, including Zartan. And that's it. It's all over but the gumbo for G.I. Joe in this episode countdown for Zartan. Really fun. Some really strong highlight moments throughout. They picked a really good cast for this one, in spite of the sort of the interesting choices in not having like a Duke or a Flint involved in this episode. They picked some really, really great characters to showcase. Zartan. Any Zartan episode is usually a really strong one. Storm Shadow, Lady J, and Spirit all really having some big highlights. Cobra Commander a little bit muted in the back seat for the most part, along with Destro, but they had some moments themselves as well. And speaking of moments that maybe I haven't been able to highlight yet, that's what we have the GI Retro montage for.
Your turn, Gung Ho, and remember the loser makes dinner. I win.
What did you do that for, Lady J? He'll make us eat that homemade Cajun gumbo of his.
Yeah, last time we used it to fuel the Sky Strikers.
Gumbo builds muscles.
You want to get out of here in one piece. Start talking, creep.
You can't fool me. You're weaklings. You won't let me die here.
Oh, yeah? Well, keep your eye on this. When you change your mind, just holler.
Shall I attempt to rescue Zartan?
He is so clever. Let him escape on his own. Let's hope there's enough auxiliary power to give you a big surprise.
No! Stop it!
Lady J, are you hurt?
I'm all right. He hit me from behind.
I hate the sunlight. I hate it.
If I had your complexion, so would I.
Well, what a nice bit of fluff you are.
This bit of fluff bites.
Now that Cobra's done with, let's get down to serious business. Making Cajun gumbo.
Ah, Cajun gumbo. A true American delicacy.
At last, a man with good taste.
Freedom, how'd you like my share of that gumbo?
Really fun last sort of heroes laughing fade to black moment that we get with Spirit offering Freedom his share of Gung Ho's gumbo. But also from that, what really stood out to me is some of the animation in this episode. It was maybe a little inconsistent at times. I mean, look no further than that close-up of Freedom at the end. But when the animation is good, there's really no beating it. And what I look at here and why I included it in the montage, one, because it's really cool that the sunlight weakness of Zartan, I always loved as a kid. I mean, it would be really annoying and inconvenient, but when they showcase it in the cartoon, it looks awesome. And I think it's the best piece of animation in this episode. The detail, how he looks, tremendous stuff. And I don't know if it's because it was difficult to animate, but they sort of do phase it out throughout season 1, where they kind of drop that aspect of Zartan, which bums me out because I love the stealth camouflage and I love the sunlight weakness with Zartan, but I really love that bit of animation. And also when Zartan was trapped behind bars and we get the sort of the sweating close-ups and just the fear-racked face of Zartan, also really strong animation there too. So again, like I said, when it's good, there's really no beating the animation in G.I. Joe, Real American Hero, in my opinion. But we've got a couple more honorifics to hand out here. We've already done the MIA and the DYD, but let's now go to the foul-up of the week.
You're here because you're an industrial straight follow-up.
Thank you, Sarge. I already mentioned a couple of the foul up of the week contenders for this episode. First, we had Lady J just charging off into the darkness to take on Zartan with no real plan, despite Zartan having a clear tactical advantage, and she paid for it. She got KO'd like immediately. So definite foul up contender there. And then we had Recondo pulling the wrong wire and nearly detonating that bomb. Would have undone that great plan by Gung Ho and, oh yeah, killed everyone in the building. And then the late entry. Me forgetting to mention Recondo is in this episode when I was listing off the key players. My bad. But not the winner of foul up of the week in this case. No, foul up of the week belongs to the title character of this episode. Countdown for Zartan, not Zartan's best day at work. He's supposed to be the master of disguise and really didn't stick the landing on his Dr. Metier. Got seen through immediately by Spirit and Freedom. Then again, when the Joe team showed up later on, really no poker face, no ability to sort of play the role beyond just wearing the mask and duplicating the voice. So, got to go back to formula on that one for Zartan. So the disguise didn't work, which is what the whole plan hinged on. And then, falling victim to the mind games of Gung Ho when they put him in the prison cell there. He cracked under the pressure and gave away where the bomb was. Of course, it was self-preservation, but still, definitely the foul up of the week belongs to Zartan. Great character, great episode, not without his highlight moments, of course, as well. Showcasing that beautiful hair of his stealth camouflage ability. I talked about the animation. I always love a Zartan episode, but in this case, he fouled it up and ruined Cobra's scheme. So he is the winner this week. But where there's a foul up, there's an MVP. So let's go ahead and get to it. Who is this week's episode MVP?
On a night where you thought, well, he isn't quite himself. How good can you be? MVP.
This is another episode where the contenders for MVP are only contending for second place, because I think the actual winner for MVP is very obvious from where I sit and will probably be unanimous when all of you weigh in as well. But I guess we'll see. Let's talk about some of those contenders. Got to give some love to Freedom, the animal companions on G.I. Joe continuing to show their value and worth to the team. Freedom saving Spirit at one juncture, sussing out Zartan's Dr. Metier disguise multiple times. Really good episode for Freedom and Spirit too. Very memorable, but he did get captured, but a nice episode for Spirit. Had some cool moments to shine, definitely. And then there's Gung Ho. I think in any other episode, Gung Ho probably takes MVP here. I loved his plan and his mind games to make Zartan crack, and it worked to perfection. Really good stuff from Gung Ho. But no, when you destroy a tank with your bare hands, yeah, you're gonna be the episode MVP. So of course, the honors for this episode go to the Ninja Storm Shadow. What a fantastic, iconic spotlight this episode is for Storm Shadow. Kind of funny in an episode named for Zartan, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of Zartan in this episode, but what I take away from it, what is most memorable to me, is this showcase for Storm Shadow. Destroying that tank, battling again with Spirit, seeing more of that code of honor of his, and again, when the Cobra hideout is exploding, just in flames behind him, walking away. What a great last visual. Like I said, just an absolute top tier episode for Storm Shadow. Very deserving for MVP.
We shall meet again, Spirit. We shall meet again.
And that is just about going to do it for this edition of GI Retro. Thank you so very much for watching. I'm excited to be in these standalone episodes. It was a great one to start with. I love Countdown for Zartan, one of my favorites, like I said. But yes, thank you for watching. Please be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends and fellow members in the G.I. Joe community. But most importantly, continue to rewatch and sound off with your thoughts in the comments or on social media. You can find me on Twitter at GI Retro Show, or you can email me, james@giretro.com, and let me know who's your pick for MVP, though I think we're probably on the same page there, but maybe not. Or foul up, DYD, all that good stuff. Any of the other highlights from this episode or the series in general. I love hearing from all of you. It's been a lot of fun. And next up is Red Rocket's Glare. So until then, if you didn't know, now you know. Take it away, Flint.
And knowing is half the battle.